So there I am, standing at the edge of my own field, watching Karen's $20,000 wedding tent sway in the breeze like a royal pavilion. Music blaring, guests in stilettos stomping over my soybean sprouts, and her caterer has the audacity to ask if my tractor can move because it's ruining the aesthetic. That's when I calmly flipped the switch, and the manure spreaders roared to life. Smash to intro screen. How did it come to this? Let's rewind a bit. I'm the sheriff of a quiet county tucked away in the Appalachian foothills. Sprawling forests, winding back roads, the kind of place where people wave when they pass you, even if they don't like you. I spent 20 years in the military before moving back home to take care of my father after his first stroke. He passed last spring, left me the land and the hunting lodge he built with his own hands over 30 years. He used to say that lodge was his cathedral, and standing there, surrounded by pine and peace, I finally understood what he meant. The place isn't just wood and nails, it's legacy. Family. Everything he taught me about patience, grit, and keeping your boots clean even when the world's full of crap. Now enter Deborah Witherspoon, HOA president, recent divorcee with a vengeance. Looks like a walking JCPenney catalog from 2003 and drives a Lexus that's never seen a gravel road. The kind of woman who believes every problem can be solved with a form, a fine, or a fake smile. I'd seen her around once or twice, back when she was still playing housewife in the cul-de-sac next to my property. Didn't think much of her, until she decided my dad's lodge threatened the harmony of the neighborhood. See, my lodge is just outside of HOA boundaries. Just, as in, 10 feet outside the imaginary line she thinks gives her dominion over all things natural. It's not part of the HOA. Never has been. Never will be. But that didn't stop her from marching up to my front porch one Saturday morning, holding a clipboard like it was the 10 Commandments. I was midway through replacing a storm shutter when I heard the unmistakable sound of heels on gravel. I turned and there she was, perched like a smug vulture. "Hi there," she chirped, as if she hadn't just trespassed onto private property. "I'm Deborah, the HOA president for Sycamore Bluff. We've had a few complaints about your structure." She said structure like it was a slur. I wiped my hands on a rag and raised an eyebrow. "You mean my family lodge?" She gave me that tight smile. "Yes, well, the logs are untreated. And your woodpile is visible from the road. It's just not cohesive with the community aesthetic." I looked behind her at the forest stretching into the hills, not a soul in sight for half a mile. "The community? You mean the raccoons?" That didn't go over well. She huffed, pulled a stapled packet from her clipboard, and handed it to me. "These are the HOA guidelines. Section 8 covers structure visibility, landscaping, and color palettes." I didn't even take the packet. "I'm not in the HOA." Her smile cracked just a little. "You're adjacent to it, and that has visual impact. We're trying to preserve property values." Now, here's the thing about me. I don't like confrontation, but I don't run from it either. I told her plainly, "This land's been in my family since 1952. That lodge predates your entire subdivision. And unless your bylaws were signed by God himself, they don't apply here." I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. The next week, signs popped up along the gravel road leading to my property. "Private, HOA residents only." They looked official, laminated, nailed to stakes, even had her fake HOA logo on them. One was blocking the trailhead I use for hiking. Another was right at the bend in the road, half covering the wooden sign my dad carved decades ago, "Welcome to Fox Hollow." I pulled them all up and burned them in a fire pit that night. Next morning, they were back. Then came the fines, mailed to my house in crisp white envelopes with her HOA letterhead. Violation, unauthorized structure. Violation, unapproved fire pit. Violation, wildlife attractant. Apparently, leaving corn out for deer now constituted criminal negligence in the eyes of Deborah Witherspoon. Again, not in the HOA. I filed an official cease and desist, citing property law, zoning boundaries, and the very clear line where the HOA ended. I even offered to meet with her civilly. She responded by forwarding my infractions to the local utility company. That's when things got personal. I came home one evening and the power was off. No storms, no down lines. Just gone. I checked the meter, and sure enough, it had been disconnected manually. I called the utility office, and the woman on the other end told me a complaint was filed. Safety hazard. Uninhabited structure. Immediate risk. I had to fax over land deeds and legal documentation just to get my power turned back on. This wasn't some passive-aggressive neighbor dispute anymore. This was a campaign. She wanted that lodge gone, and she didn't care how she got it. What she didn't realize was, I've got more patience than a church pew on Easter Sunday. And I play the long game. So I started watching, collecting, building a file. Every letter she sent, every bogus fine, photos of the signs, records of tampering, testimonies from neighbors she bullied. I wasn't planning to use any of it yet. I was hoping, stupidly, that she'd get bored and move on to harassing someone's mailbox flowers. Instead, she escalated. One Saturday morning, I noticed tire tracks along the trail behind my shed. Followed them and found that she, or someone working for her, had tried to dump a pile of contractor trash in the creek. Old siding, drywall scraps, paint cans. I reported it, cleaned it up myself, and decided it was time to set some boundaries. I posted a large wooden sign at the property line, private land, non-HOA. Violators will be prosecuted. Simple, clear. Next morning, it was gone. Not just gone, replaced. With a plastic sign that read, Future Site of Sycamore Bluffs Nature Park. Sponsored by your HOA. That's when I realized this wasn't just a power trip. It was a land grab. She wanted my property annexed. Turned into some manicured playground for weekend brunchers. My father's hand-built lodge? Probably flattened to make room for a yoga deck and gluten-free picnic tables. But the final straw, the thing that flipped the switch in my head from tolerance to total war, was the wedding tent. She didn't even ask. Just rolled in with trucks, caterers, and florists. Said the field behind my barn was ideal for her niece's rustic ceremony. Claimed the county gave her verbal approval. I watched as they hammered stakes into my land, rolled out carpets over my soybeans, and set up white chairs like this was some kind of bridal magazine shoot. And then the caterer walked up, looked me dead in the eyes, and asked if I could move my John Deere out of the frame. That's when I calmly flipped the switch on the manure spreaders. What happened next went viral, but we're not there yet. Because while everyone was busy filming the chaos and scrubbing wedding cake off their rented tuxedos, I got a call from the fire department. A fire. Out in the woods. Near the lodge. And I knew. Before I even turned the siren on, before I saw the smoke curling into the sky, before the ash coated the back of my throat, I knew. She'd taken it one step too far. And this time, I wasn't going to wait. I knew before I even reached the ridge. Before I saw the plume of dark smoke slicing through the sky like a funeral banner. Before the radio crackled with updates from dispatch. Before the ash hit my windshield. I knew. That fire wasn't an accident. It wasn't lightning, it wasn't some careless camper, and it sure as hell wasn't a controlled burn. It was arson. And in the pit of my stomach, in the same place that told me when someone was lying to my face, I knew exactly who was responsible. By the time I reached the site, the lodge was already gone. Flames had torn through the old timber like it was matchstick. 30 years of my father's handiwork reduced to a blackened skeleton. The porch had collapsed in on itself. The chimney stood alone like a gravestone. The old elk head he'd mounted above the fireplace, the one he bagged with me on my 12th birthday, was just ash. The windows were all shattered, twisted frames glowing orange with heat. Firefighters were still dousing the perimeter, keeping it from jumping into the surrounding brush. And I stood there, soaked in sweat and smoke, teeth clenched so hard I thought they might shatter. One of the fire chiefs, Charlie, walked over to me slowly, helmet in hand. He looked grim. He didn't have to say anything, but he did anyway. "We found a gas can," he said quietly. "Off to the side of the foundation. Hidden under some brush." My jaw twitched. Could have been someone dumping trash. Charlie hesitated, then shook his head. "There's more. The ignition point's not natural. Accelerant trails. Multiple. And there's, well, you should see it." He led me behind what used to be the tool shed. There in the mud were boot prints. Not firefighter prints. Not hiking boot. Tactical. Light tread. Size 8, maybe 9. Not big enough to be one of my guys. Not anyone I recognize. And definitely not my own. But you know who does wear brand new tactical boots when she's playing dress up in the forest? Karen. 2 days ago, I spotted her at the local army surplus store, haggling with the cashier over the price of a camouflage jacket. I remember it because she insisted on calling it couture combat wear. And now there were footprints in the mud behind my dead father's burning lodge, wearing the same boots she was showing off like she was headed to a fashion war zone. But the real nail in the coffin? That came later. Because I'm not a fool. Ever since the bogus power shutoff, I'd started installing backup cameras around the property. Not obvious ones either. Wildlife cams, hidden among the trees and up in the rafters. Motion triggered. Cloud synced. My little insurance policy. And guess what? Not even fire can erase cloud footage. Back at the station, I sat down with my laptop, opened the footage folder, and fast-forwarded through hours of squirrels and wind-blown branches. Until I saw her. Deborah Witherspoon. HOA royalty. In full camo, skulking around like a bad extra from a low-budget war movie. Carrying a red plastic gas can. She approached the side of the lodge just before dusk, looking over her shoulder twice, then dumping liquid along the perimeter. She paused to light something, a rag maybe, and dropped it with a flourish like she was lighting the Olympic torch. The fire caught quick. She watched for a second, then bolted. She didn't even wear a mask. Not a hood. Not a scarf. Nothing. Just her perfectly ironed wilderness outfit and a smug little smile as she destroyed the one thing left of my father's legacy. She burned it down and walked away like it was some kind of statement. I didn't move for a full minute. Just stared at the paused frame of her face glowing in the firelight. I could have called her out right then. Could have marched over to her prim little McMansion and slapped a pair of cuffs on her in front of the HOA board and her poodle groomer. But I didn't. Not yet. Because this wasn't just about arson anymore. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about everything else she'd done to me, and to everyone else around her. The fake fines. The fake signs. The harassment. The power games. The stolen property. The lies. So I built the case. Slowly. Quietly. I pulled phone records, traced purchases, got security footage from the gas station where she filled that can. I talked to neighbors she'd harassed, people she'd threatened with legal action for things like hanging wind chimes or painting their mailbox an unsanctioned shade of blue. I dug through public records and discovered something interesting. The HOA bylaws she waved around like scripture had never been legally filed with the county. Meaning all the authority she'd been throwing around? Completely fabricated. And it didn't stop there. With some digging, I learned Karen had bullied every other HOA board member into resigning. Or more accurately, she forged their resignations. They never quit. She just submitted letters on their behalf, complete with fake signatures, to the internal newsletter and claimed victory. No elections. No vote. No meetings. She declared herself president for life and no one had bothered to challenge her because, well, she's exhausting. And terrifying. And relentless. But now I had the smoking gun. Literally. There was only one question left. Why? Why torch the lodge? Why take it that far? The answer came from her niece, of all people. I didn't expect it, but she came by the station the next morning. Young woman, maybe mid-20s, nervous but determined. Said she wanted to apologize for the wedding incident, and also, maybe, she had some information. Apparently, Karen wanted the lodge gone because she had plans. Big ones. She'd been pitching a wellness retreat expansion to the HOA, hoping to convert that entire section of forest into a commercial property. Spa, hiking trails, gazebo, the whole overpriced fantasy. The lodge, and my refusal to play along, was the only thing standing in her way. She figured if it burned down and I got fed up, I'd sell the land cheap. Move on. Be out of her hair. One less backwoods redneck with property rights. I thanked her for her honesty and made sure she got home safe. Then I opened a new file. Arson. Fraud. Forgery. Criminal impersonation. Harassment. Abuse of power. And that was just what I had so far. I wasn't going to kick in her door just yet. No, I wanted her to sweat. I wanted her to keep digging her own grave with every smug HOA notice she posted, every fake fine she mailed, every neighborhood rule she invented out of thin air. But the final piece, the one I wasn't expecting, came 3 days later, just as I was preparing the formal arrest warrant. I got a call from one of my deputies, said I should come down to the county clerk's office. There, tucked in the corner of a newly submitted permit application, was Deborah's signature on a document claiming my land as conditionally annexed community property under HOA expansion efforts. She had officially filed paperwork declaring ownership of my burned land. And in doing so, she'd committed one last, beautiful, fatal mistake. She gave me the legal excuse to burn down her entire fake empire. The question now wasn't whether she was going down. The question was how loud I could make it when she hit the ground. I could have arrested her right then and there. Had the footage, the prints, the gas can, the paper trail, the motive, and now a certified document where she claimed legal dominion over land she didn't own after burning it to the ground. But see, I didn't want an arrest. I wanted a spectacle. I wanted every smug, condescending letter she'd ever written to echo back at her in a courtroom. I wanted her empire, her fake authority, her delusional HOA monarchy to go down in flames twice as hard as she thought she'd burned my lodge. So I went to work, quietly, methodically, and I didn't just focus on the arson. No, I dug into everything. Her HOA board, her personal finances, her legal filings, the shady contractor work she ordered through cash-only deals. I even pulled zoning complaints and noticed a pattern. Every property she fined or threatened. They were properties owned by older folks, single moms, or folks too busy working 2 jobs to push back. In other words, people she figured wouldn't fight back. And in most cases they didn't. Until now. I reached out to those neighbors one by one. Sat at kitchen tables, drank burned coffee, listened to their stories. And man, did they have stories. One woman, Miss Lorna, had her backyard birdbath dismantled for being an unauthorized water feature. Another guy, Bill, was fined for using non-regulation holiday lights. The kicker? He's Jewish. She fined a menorah. She charged late fees for dues that didn't exist. Threatened legal action with law firms that turned out to be fake. And every fine came with a neat little warning about possible lien placement, which she apparently used to scare folks into paying. She was running her own little dictatorship, funded by fear, wrapped in bureaucracy, and no one had stopped her because no one knew where to start. But now they had me, and I was done being polite. I called in a few favors from friends in state-level offices. Got a fast-track review on her forged HOA charter. Confirmed what I suspected. The document had never been properly notarized, and most of the signatures were copied from a year-old yard sale sign-up sheet. She literally used names from people who came to buy used crockpots and folding chairs, then declared them voting members of her new regime. With that information locked in, I filed a formal report to the county clerk, flagged the HOA as operating illegally, and got the ball rolling on having their authority revoked entirely. But that was just step 1. I wanted to make sure when she went down, she couldn't slither her way into another neighborhood and do it all over again. Meanwhile, she was getting bolder. Like a cornered raccoon with a pearl necklace. She must have sensed I wasn't responding the way I used to, no more emails, no calls, no angry rebuttals. So she ramped things up. Sent out a mass newsletter to the neighborhood claiming I was under investigation for aggressive and antisocial behavior, complete with a blurry photo of me mid-yawn at the gas station, trying to make me look unhinged. She claimed I'd been harassing her and trying to illegally prevent HOA expansion for personal vendettas. That was cute. Then she held a mandatory community meeting in the park across from her house and passed around a petition to have me removed as sheriff. She even had signs printed. My favorite said, "No law above the HOA." Which, honestly, just made my job easier. But she didn't stop there. She moved on to the final, most ridiculous stage of her delusion. She tried to break into the ruins of the lodge. I caught her on my camera system again, this time with a measuring tape and a man she claimed was a restoration consultant. She was trying to appraise the ashes of a building she'd torched herself. When I showed up in uniform, she tried to play it cool. "Oh, I was just checking the site for insurance purposes," she said, all fake smiles and squinting like the sun owed her money. "For your insurance?" I asked, letting the question hang. She blinked. "Well, community insurance. We're assuming responsibility now. It's being annexed into the HOA proper. It's in transition." I looked down at the mud where her consultant was standing, right on top of the old fire pit my dad had dug with a spade and a bad back. My jaw locked so tight I felt my molars grind. "Deborah," I said calmly, "you're trespassing, and I'm going to have to ask you to leave before I add another count to your file." That wiped the smile right off her face. "You can't be serious. I'm the president of—" "No," I cut her off. "You're the president of a fake organization with no legal authority, operating under forged documents, who committed arson, fraud, and is about to find herself in handcuffs unless she gets the hell off my land." The consultant took one look at me, muttered something about not being paid enough, and hightailed it to his truck. Deborah turned bright red. She opened her mouth like she was about to go full soprano, but then caught herself. Maybe she realized the look in my eyes wasn't just annoyance anymore. It was something else. Something she hadn't seen before. The quiet fury of a man who's been patient too long. The next morning, I walked into the county courthouse and filed the arrest warrant myself. Didn't trust anyone else with it. Arson. Vandalism. Filing false claims. Harassment. Fraudulent legal documents. Impersonating an official. Wire tampering. The charges stacked higher than her Christmas tree made of gold-plated HOA ornaments. I got the judge to sign off that afternoon. But I wasn't done. I coordinated with a few of her victims, people she'd bullied and fined and threatened. I let them know what was coming, and asked if they wanted to witness justice firsthand. They showed up in lawn chairs. Popcorn. One guy brought a megaphone. When we pulled up to her pristine White House, she was hosting another meeting in her front yard. Folding tables covered in clipboards. HOA banners everywhere. She had her back turned as I walked up with my deputies. She was mid-sentence, complaining about someone's hedge height, when I said her name. "Deborah Witherspoon," I called out, voice even. She turned annoyed. Then froze. I stepped forward and read the charges, every last one. Her face turned from smug to confused to furious to pale. I could see the moment her brain caught up with reality, and realized the man she'd been harassing for months, the one whose property she burned, the one she thought was just some redneck with a badge, was about to end her little kingdom. "You can't arrest me," she shouted. "I'm the president. This is illegal." I pulled out the warrant. "This says otherwise." And as we escorted her to the cruiser, the neighbors she'd terrorized applauded. Someone even played the national anthem from a Bluetooth speaker. She screamed something about lawsuits and civil liberties, and tried to throw herself dramatically onto her hydrangeas. It didn't help. But just before we drove off, one of my deputies leaned over and whispered, "You still want to charge her for the wedding tent?" I smiled. "Oh, I'm just getting started." Court day came faster than I expected. Not because the system moves quickly, it usually doesn't, but because I made it a personal mission to ensure every I was dotted and every T was crossed. I wanted this airtight. I wanted her to walk in thinking she could talk her way out of anything like she always had, and then watch as it all unraveled in front of her. She showed up in a beige pantsuit that screamed, "I've never done anything wrong in my life," flanked by some bottom-shelf lawyer who looked like he was billing her by the minute to pretend she had a defense. The courtroom wasn't full, but the people who mattered were there. Miss Lorna with her birdbath photos, Bill with his mailbox color printouts, a half-dozen others with stacks of fake fines and HOA threats she'd mailed them like confetti. And me, in uniform, sitting straight-backed, not gloating, just waiting. Karen, because no one was calling her Deborah anymore, tried to put on her usual act. She spun the arson as a misunderstanding. Said she'd been clearing brush. Maybe, accidentally, spilled gas. Didn't know the structure was occupied or valuable. Claimed the lodge was abandoned and she was doing the community a favor by making space for green development. Her lawyer threw around words like miscommunication and civic duty and administrative error. But when the footage played, the crystal-clear video of her in camo, dumping accelerant around the base of the lodge and lighting it with what looked like manic glee, it was over. You could feel the air go out of the room. Her own lawyer looked down at his notes and stopped talking. The judge paused, eyebrows raised, and then quietly asked the bailiff to rewind it. Everyone watched it again in silence. After that, it wasn't about if she was guilty. It was about how guilty. The judge didn't hold back. 5 years probation. Mandatory community service. Full restitution to cover damages. And not the pretend kind either. Real restitution. Court-approved valuations of the lodge, the property damage and emotional distress. The number made her flinch. Over $800,000. Her insurance? Didn't cover intentional arson. That left her assets, her car, her savings, and of course her house. I didn't cheer. I didn't gloat. I just watched as her whole world cracked under the weight of her own arrogance. But the best part wasn't even in the courtroom. It came a week later when I filed a civil suit on top of the criminal conviction. I wasn't in it for the money. I already had the lodge insured for part of its value, and I could rebuild, but I wanted it public. I wanted every document she ever filed, every fake fine and illegal signature, exposed. I wanted it on the record that everything she built was based on lies. And it worked. The county reviewed her HOA's charter and declared it invalid. Without legal standing, every action she took as president was nullified. Every lien, every fine, every threat gone. The board, if you could call it that, dissolved. The bank moved fast too. With her house tied up in court-mandated payments, and no HOA funds left to cover legal fees, she had to put her McMansion up for sale. Last I heard, it's been sitting on the market with a sagging price-reduced sign out front. No one wants to live in the place the HOA tyrant used as her castle. And what about the community she tormented? They threw a barbecue the weekend after the verdict. Real one. Ribs, cornbread, cold beer, kids running barefoot through the sprinklers. No clipboards, no rulebooks, no HOA bans on plastic cutlery. People smiled again. Laughed. It was like the air got lighter. Miss Lorna brought me a plate and said it felt like the end of a very long winter. I knew exactly what she meant. As for the lodge, I rebuilt it. Not exactly the same. Some things can't be replaced, but I used fireproof materials this time. Reinforced the frame, added solar panels, and built a stone fire pit right out front. I even carved a new sign, same style as my dad's, with one small change. Underneath, Fox Hollow Lodge, I burned in another line with a woodburning pen. Karen-proof since 2024. It made me laugh. I think my dad would have liked it too. The final cherry on top came in the form of her community service. By court order, she was assigned to the county maintenance program, cleaning graffiti, repainting picnic benches, scrubbing out the public restrooms at the park she once tried to claim was private HOA land. I drove by once, saw her in a neon vest, hose in hand, power washing a sidewalk while a group of teens recorded her on their phones. She tried to turn away from the camera, but someone yelled, "Hey! Aren't you the lady who burned down a forest?" And the look on her face, well, it was almost enough to make me feel sorry for her. Almost. She still tries, now and then. Sends appeals. Writes letters claiming she was framed, misunderstood, politically targeted. None of it goes anywhere. Every agency she contacts already has the evidence. Every judge she whines to has already seen the footage. Her name is dirt, and not even the HOA newsletter, now defunct of course, could spin that into anything salvageable. But I don't think about her much anymore. These days, I spend more time up at the new lodge, fixing the place up, hunting in the fall, drinking coffee on the deck when the fog rolls through the trees like smoke that didn't come to destroy. I planted wildflowers where the foundation used to be. Let the forest take back what was stolen. I even rebuilt the memorial bench I'd made for my dad. Stained it darker this time, sealed it twice, bolted it to the ground. Sometimes, people still ask me if I regret not arresting her sooner. If I wish I'd thrown the book at her the first time she stepped foot on my land with her nonsense clipboard and rules that didn't exist. And maybe, in some other version of the world, I would have. But in this one? I'm glad I waited. Because it wasn't just about punishing her. It was about showing everyone like her that you can't bully your way into power and expect to walk away clean. You want to act like the law doesn't apply to you? Fine. Just don't be surprised when the guy you've been messing with turns out to be the one writing the arrest warrant. In the end, all she had to do was leave me alone. Respect a line that wasn't hers to cross. But Karen never saw a boundary she didn't try to claim, never heard a no she didn't think she could argue into a yes. And so she lost everything. Me? I gained peace. And maybe, just maybe, a damn good story to tell whenever someone new moves in and asks what happened to the HOA around here. I usually smile, point toward the hills and say, let's just say they picked the wrong property to mess with. Then I offer them coffee. No rules, no fines, no forms. Just neighbors. The way it should be.